You're not stuck because life is unfair. You're stuck because part of you has never been lived, and it's quietly running your destiny right now. Most people think fate is something external, bad timing, wrong people, unlucky breaks. That belief is comforting and dangerous because it hides the truth that your unconscious choices are already shaping your outcomes. As Carl Gustav Jung revealed, whatever you refuse to bring into awareness doesn't disappear. It returns, disguised as destiny. That's why the same patterns repeat, the same frustrations circle back, and the same inattention keeps knocking. Here's the counterintuitive truth. Your life isn't blocked, it's unfinished. And the moment you start seeing what you've avoided, fate begins to loosen its grip. In this video, you'll discover how the unlived parts of you quietly dictate your relationships, your pain, and your direction, and how consciousness turns repetition into choice. This isn't motivation. It's a map back to yourself. There's a quiet tension living inside you, and you feel it most when the world goes silent. It's that sense that something in your life is unfinished, postponed, or subtly avoided. You might call it restlessness, boredom, or bad luck, but deep down, you know it's more than that. What you avoid doesn't vanish. It slips into your unconscious and waits there, patient and strategic. Over time, it begins to steer your choices, your relationships, even your sense of destiny. This is how fate is born, not from randomness, but from silence. Awareness is the moment you realize life isn't happening to you. It's responding to you. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Think of the unlived life like a book you never opened, but keep carrying in your backpack. It gets heavier every year, doesn't it? The shadow pages, your ignored talents, suppressed anger, hidden creativity, add weight you feel as exhaustion or frustration. You might notice patterns repeating, same conflicts, same disappointments, same emotional loops. That's not bad luck. That's the psyche knocking, saying, hey, you missed something back there. Self-knowledge begins when you stop blaming circumstances and start reading what you've been avoiding. Integration isn't about fixing yourself. It's about reclaiming what's already yours. And oddly enough, that's where transformation starts to feel inevitable. Let's make this practical. Say you've always wanted to speak up, create, or lead, but you chose safety instead. You took the reasonable job, stayed quiet in relationships, avoided risks that scared you. Now you feel stuck, maybe even resentful, though nothing is obviously wrong. That's the unconscious collecting interest. One simple action? Start a daily truth journal, 5 minutes a day, no filters. Write what you didn't say, what you wanted to do, what you felt but dismissed. Books like Man's Search for Meaning or The War of Art can help you recognize this inner resistance. Small acts of awareness loosen the grip of fate faster than grand gestures ever could. Here's the paradox most people miss. What you fear becoming often holds your greatest strength. The shadow isn't evil, it's unused energy. The anger you suppress could be healthy boundaries. The envy you hide could be clarity about your desires. The sadness you outrun could be wisdom asking to be heard. When you deny these parts, they don't disappear. They leak into your life sideways, shaping outcomes you don't understand. That's how destiny feels like a trap instead of a path. But the moment you turn toward these inner figures with curiosity instead of judgment, something shifts. Awareness turns chaos into conversation. You don't need to overhaul your life overnight. Honestly, that's another form of avoidance. What you need is the courage to notice where your energy drops and ask why. Where do you feel drained, bored, or oddly triggered? That's the psyche pointing to unfinished business. Fate tightens where consciousness is absent and loosens where attention arrives. The unlived life isn't punishing you. It's inviting you. And as you begin to listen, you'll sense another layer emerging, one that reveals how repetition itself is trying to teach you something you haven't yet named. Here's the truth most people resist. Fate isn't out to get you. It's not a curse, bad luck, or some cosmic mistake with your name on it. Fate is communication. It's life tapping you on the shoulder again and again, saying, "You're not listening yet. Do." When the same situations keep showing up, same disappointments, same emotional wounds, it's not because you're broken. It's because your unconscious is louder than your awareness right now. As Carl Gustav Jung hinted, what stays unconscious doesn't stay quiet. It becomes destiny. And destiny, when misunderstood, feels cruel instead of instructive. Think of fate like a GPS recalculating the route. Miss the turn once, and it gently redirects. Miss it 10 times, and the voice gets sharper. That sharpness shows up as frustration, anxiety, or that haunting sense of, "Why does this keep happening to me?" The psyche isn't moral. It doesn't punish or reward. It teaches through repetition. When awareness is absent, life uses intensity. When consciousness grows, intensity fades. This is why two people can face the same hardship and emerge completely different. One bitter, one transformed. The difference isn't the event, it's the level of self-knowledge brought to it. Let's ground this. Imagine someone who keeps attracting emotionally unavailable partners. They might say, "That's just my luck." But fate is pointing to something precise, a familiar pattern rooted in the unconscious, often learned early. Maybe love once meant distance, silence, or earning approval. Until that pattern becomes conscious, destiny will keep reenacting it with new faces. A practical step? Write down the last 3 major emotional disappointments in your life. Look for similarities in how they began, escalated, and ended. Patterns reveal themselves when you stop romanticizing randomness and start respecting meaning. Pain, in this sense, is intelligent. It doesn't scream for attention without reason. It highlights exactly where awareness hasn't arrived yet. That's why avoiding discomfort never works. It just postpones the lesson and increases the cost. The unconscious doesn't negotiate, it compensates. Ignore your need for purpose, and fate delivers emptiness. Ignore your need for boundaries, and fate sends conflict. Ignore your creative impulse, and destiny answers with numbness. But the moment you say, "What is this trying to show me?" something unlocks. Transformation begins not with control, but with curiosity. Here's the shift that changes everything. When you treat fate as feedback, you regain authority. You stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What now?" Awareness doesn't erase hardship, but it gives you leverage inside it. Destiny tightens where denial lives and relaxes where honesty enters. And once you experience that, even once, you'll start noticing something else. The same patterns don't just repeat randomly. They circle, refine, and escalate, waiting for one thing only: your willingness to see them clearly. Here's something uncomfortable but liberating. The parts of you that run your life most effectively are often the parts you refuse to acknowledge. While you're busy identifying as rational, kind, or in control, your shadow is quietly steering reactions, decisions, and impulses. The shadow isn't some dark monster. It's simply everything you were taught to hide, soften, or silence to belong. And when it's ignored, it doesn't disappear. It drives from the back seat. That's why you sometimes react in ways that surprise even you. Awareness begins the moment you admit that consciousness isn't in full control yet. Think of the shadow like a powerful engine with no steering wheel, full of energy, instincts, and raw intelligence, but no direction. Suppress anger, and it leaks out as sarcasm or self-sabotage. Deny ambition, and it turns into resentment. Reject vulnerability, and fate answers with emotional isolation. The unconscious always finds a way to express itself, just not in ways you'd consciously choose. This is why self-knowledge isn't about becoming better, but about becoming more whole. Integration is what happens when you stop exiling parts of yourself and start giving them a seat at the table. Let's make this real. Notice what irritates you most in others. The loud one, the selfish one, the overly confident one. More often than not, that irritation is a mirror. The shadow reveals itself through emotional charge, a simple exercise. When something triggers you, pause and ask, where does this live in me, even in small doses? Journal the answer without judgment. This isn't about acting out those traits. It's about understanding their energy. Read Owning Your Own Shadow by Robert Johnson. If you want a grounded way to work with this, awareness transforms projection into insight. Here's the irony. The qualities you reject are often the ones that would free you. Assertiveness might feel rude because you learned silence equals safety. Confidence might feel arrogant because you were rewarded for shrinking. Creativity might feel impractical because security was prioritized over meaning. Fate keeps placing you in situations where these traits are required, not to punish you, but to invite integration. The psyche doesn't want perfection, it wants balance. When shadow energy is integrated, it becomes clarity, strength, and grounded authority. Once you stop fighting the shadow, you notice something subtle shifting. Reactions soften. Choices feel cleaner. You're no longer blindsided by your own behavior because you recognize its source. The shadow stops hijacking the wheel and starts cooperating with consciousness. That's when destiny feels less chaotic and more intentional. But as this control returns, another realization quietly emerges. The shadow didn't form randomly. It was shaped early, reinforced by repetition, and refined through patterns you've lived many times before. Most people assume their life choices are conscious, logical, and personal. But if you look closely, you'll notice how much of your life feels pre-written, like lines you learned early and keep reciting without realizing it. The way you handle conflict, success, love, and failure often follows an old script, not a fresh decision. That script lives in the unconscious, shaped by family dynamics, cultural expectations, and emotional survival strategies. Awareness begins when you sense that subtle discomfort, the feeling that you're playing a role instead of living a truth. Fate feels heavy precisely where the script goes unquestioned. Think of this script like an old movie playing on repeat in the background. You don't notice it until the scenes start clashing with who you're becoming. Maybe you learned that love means sacrifice, so you overgive. Maybe you learned that visibility is dangerous, so you stay small. These patterns once protected you. Now they limit you. The unconscious doesn't update itself automatically. It waits for consciousness to intervene. That's why self-knowledge can feel destabilizing at first. You're not just learning something new, you're interrupting something old. Here's a practical way to spot the script. Pay attention to sentences you say automatically. That's just how I am. People like me don't do that. It's too late now. Those phrases are lines from the script. Write them down and ask, who taught me this? Often, the answer isn't you. This isn't about blaming parents or society. It's about reclaiming authorship. Books like The Drama of the Gifted Child by Alice Miller can help you recognize how early adaptation becomes adult destiny. Awareness loosens the grip of repetition. The reason fate feels unavoidable is because scripts run silently. When you don't know you're following one, you defend it as reality. But once you see it, even briefly, something cracks open. You realize you've been making sense, not making choices. That's a profound shift. Integration doesn't mean rejecting your past. It means updating it. You keep the wisdom, release the limitations, and rewrite the lines that no longer fit. Destiny begins to feel negotiable the moment consciousness enters the room. As you start questioning the script, you'll notice resistance, internal pushback, doubt, even guilt. That's normal. Old patterns don't dissolve quietly. They test your resolve. Fate often intensifies right before it loosens, almost like it's asking, are you serious this time? And as you stay with that tension, another truth starts to surface. These scripts don't just exist once. They repeat, refine, and return until you're ready to understand why repetition itself is such a powerful teacher. Awareness changes the rules of the game, and that's exactly why it feels dangerous. The moment you truly see something about yourself, you lose the comfort of denial. You can't unsee a pattern once it's clear. Before awareness, fate feels external, people, circumstances, bad timing. After awareness, responsibility quietly shifts inward, not as blame, but as power. This is why many people sense the truth and instinctively look away. Consciousness demands participation, and participation changes everything. Think of awareness like turning on the lights in a messy room. In the dark, you can pretend the clutter isn't there. Once the light is on, you're faced with choices: clean, rearrange, or live with the discomfort of seeing clearly. The unconscious prefers darkness, not because it's evil, but because it's efficient. Awareness slows things down. It interrupts automatic reactions and forces reflection. That interruption is where freedom lives, but it's also where excuses die. Let's make this practical. Suppose you realize you're staying in situations that drain you, jobs, friendships, habits, because they feel familiar. Once you see that, you can't honestly say, "I had no choice." A simple action is to audit your energy for 1 week. Each evening, write down what gave you energy and what took it away. Patterns emerge fast. Pair this with reading something grounding like Atomic Habits or Essentialism to reinforce intentional action. Awareness without action becomes frustration. Awareness with small steps becomes transformation. Here's the deeper truth. Awareness threatens the identity you built to survive. That identity might be the good one, the strong one, the low-maintenance one. When consciousness grows, those roles start to feel tight. Fate resists because the unconscious is invested in keeping things predictable. But predictability isn't the same as safety. Integration happens when you allow a more honest self to replace a more convenient one. That's not rebellion, it's maturation. Once awareness takes hold, you'll notice something subtle but profound. Life stops feeling random. Challenges become specific, almost tailored. Destiny sharpens its message because you're finally listening. And as you step into this clearer responsibility, another realization emerges quietly in the background. If awareness is dangerous because it removes excuses, then repetition exists for a reason: to make sure you eventually wake up. If you pay close attention to your life, you'll notice it speaks in loops. Same situations, different faces, same emotional outcomes, new settings. That's not coincidence, it's communication. The unconscious doesn't use words, it uses patterns. Repetition is its native language, and it speaks it fluently until awareness finally responds. Fate feels repetitive not because you're failing, but because something essential hasn't been understood yet. Once you grasp that, repetition stops feeling like a curse and starts feeling like a clue. Think of repetition like a song stuck on replay. At first, it's background noise. After a while, it becomes irritating. Eventually, you either change the track or actually listen to the lyrics. Most people try to escape repetition by changing environments, new jobs, new relationships, new cities, but the pattern travels with you because it lives inside you. Self-knowledge isn't about outrunning the pattern, it's about decoding it. The unconscious repeats what consciousness avoids. Here's a practical way to work with this. Choose one recurring frustration in your life and trace it back. Ask yourself, when did this first show up? You'll often find early emotional imprints, moments where you adapted, compromised, or learned a rule that no longer serves you. Write out the pattern like a formula: trigger, reaction, outcome. Awareness breaks the loop when you change just one element of that equation. Even a small shift, responding instead of reacting, can weaken fate's grip dramatically. Repetition also explains why advice rarely works the first time you hear it. Understanding isn't the same as integration. The psyche needs lived insight, not borrowed wisdom. That's why life keeps putting you in similar situations until the lesson becomes embodied. Pain intensifies when awareness stays superficial. But the moment you genuinely see the meaning behind the repetition, the emotional charge drops. The pattern loses its urgency. Destiny loosens when comprehension replaces confusion. Once you start recognizing repetition, you'll notice something surprising. It isn't endless. It evolves. The same lesson shows up with higher stakes, more clarity, less disguise. That escalation isn't punishment. It's refinement. Life is saying, "You're ready now." And as you begin responding with awareness instead of autopilot, another layer reveals itself. Repetition isn't just about patterns. It's about the intelligence hidden inside your pain. Pain isn't random noise in your life. It's a signal with direction. Most people treat pain like an enemy, something to silence, escape, or numb as fast as possible. But pain isn't trying to hurt you. It's trying to inform you. It points precisely to where awareness is missing and where growth is being resisted. Fate often speaks through discomfort because comfort rarely changes anyone. When you stop asking, "How do I get rid of this?" and start asking, "What is this showing me?" pain begins to reveal its intelligence. Think of pain like the warning light on a dashboard. You can cover it with tape, turn up the music, and keep driving, but the engine still overheats. Emotional pain works the same way. Anxiety might be signaling misalignment. Burnout might be pointing to ignored boundaries. Emptiness often shows up when purpose has been postponed too long. The unconscious doesn't whisper when it's ignored. It escalates. Awareness is what turns pain from a threat into guidance. Without it, destiny keeps increasing the volume. Here's how you can work with pain instead of fighting it. The next time something hurts emotionally, pause and name it without judgment. Then ask 3 questions. What am I feeling? What am I avoiding? What truth would reduce this pain if I acted on it? Write the answers down. Don't just think them. This simple act shifts you from victimhood to dialogue. Pair this with grounding habits like daily walks without headphones or short moments of silence. Pain reveals its message when you stop drowning it out. Many people fear pain because they believe it will overwhelm them. But pain doesn't want to stay forever. It wants to be understood. Once its message is received, it changes form. Sadness becomes clarity. Anger becomes direction. Fear becomes discernment. Integration happens when you allow pain to complete its task instead of interrupting it. This is why people who face their pain consciously often develop depth, empathy, and quiet strength. Destiny stops feeling hostile and starts feeling strangely supportive. As you learn to read pain instead of running from it, you'll notice something powerful. It becomes more precise and less dramatic. Life no longer needs to shake you violently to get your attention. Subtle signals start to guide you instead. And just beneath this realization, another truth begins to surface. Pain doesn't just point backward to wounds, it points forward to the parts of yourself you haven't yet claimed. There's a version of you that makes you uneasy, and that's no accident. It's the you who speaks clearly, sets boundaries, wants more, and doesn't apologize for existing. You've likely learned to keep that self in check because at some point it felt safer to shrink. But what you fear becoming is often what you most need to integrate. The unconscious hides power behind discomfort. Fate tightens when you keep refusing that power and loosens the moment you stop treating it like a threat. Think of this feared self like a locked room in your own house. You sense there's something valuable inside, but you avoid opening the door because you're not sure what you'll find. Maybe it's anger, confidence, ambition, or desire. You were taught those traits were too much, so you built an identity around being acceptable instead of authentic. But repression doesn't eliminate energy, it redirects it. What you don't live consciously, you live unconsciously. And that's when destiny starts making the decisions for you. Here's something practical you can try. Ask yourself, who am I afraid of becoming if I stop holding back? Write the answer honestly. Then look at that fear and separate distortion from truth. Confidence isn't cruelty. Assertiveness isn't selfishness. Wanting more isn't betrayal. Start expressing these traits in small, controlled ways. Say no once where you'd normally say yes. Share an honest opinion in a safe space. Take one step toward a goal you've postponed. Integration happens through practice, not courage fantasies. The irony is that the self you fear often carries the exact qualities that would stabilize your life. Boundaries reduce chaos. Self-respect filters relationships. Clarity simplifies choices. When these traits are disowned, they don't disappear. They surface as resentment, passive aggression, or quiet regret. That's the shadow-demanding expression. Awareness doesn't mean acting out every impulse. It means understanding the energy behind it and choosing how to embody it wisely. Destiny becomes lighter when your inner forces stop fighting each other. As you begin reclaiming this feared self, you'll notice a shift in how life responds to you. Situations that once drained, you start resolving faster. People treat you differently, not because they changed, but because you did. And right here, something important starts to emerge. Once you integrate the self you feared, you realize that consciousness itself has the power to rewrite what once felt inevitable. Destiny feels fixed only until consciousness enters the picture. Before awareness, life seems to happen in straight lines you didn't choose. After awareness, those lines begin to bend, not because the world changes overnight, but because you do. Consciousness alters how you interpret, respond, and decide, and that subtle shift rewrites outcomes over time. Fate thrives in automation. The moment you become present, destiny loses its grip on you. Think of consciousness like stepping out of a river. While you're in it, the current decides your direction. Once you're on the shore, you can see where it's flowing and choose whether to step back in or not. Most people live inside patterns they never observe. Awareness doesn't demand instant escape. It offers perspective, and perspective creates options. Self-knowledge isn't about control, it's about choice, and choice is where freedom lives. Here's a grounded way to strengthen consciousness. Create small pauses in your day, before responding to messages, before making decisions, before reacting emotionally. Even a 3-second pause interrupts unconscious momentum. Over time, these pauses compound. You start noticing what you're feeling instead of being ruled by it. Pair this with reflective reading, short daily passages from books like Meditations by Marcus Aurelius or Man's Search for Meaning. These practices train awareness the way exercise trains the body. When consciousness grows, destiny becomes less dramatic. Crises turn into conversations, problems turn into signals. You still face challenges, but they no longer feel personal or overwhelming. Integration replaces resistance. The unconscious no longer needs to hijack your life because it has a voice. This is why deeply conscious people often appear calm in chaos. They're not detached, they're aligned. Fate loses its urgency when it's understood. And as you experience this shift, you'll notice something quietly powerful. Life starts meeting you where you are, not where you were. Opportunities appear where repetition once lived. Clarity replaces confusion. And just beneath this clarity, one final realization begins to take shape. The life you haven't lived yet is still waiting, and it's closer than you think. There comes a moment when life stops negotiating. Not loudly, not dramatically, but firmly. What you postponed, minimized, or told yourself you'd deal with one day begins to press closer. The unlived life doesn't disappear with time. It matures. It gains weight, urgency, and presence. This is why people often feel a quiet crisis. Even when everything looks fine on the outside, destiny isn't chasing you, it's waiting for you to catch up to yourself. And that realization alone can feel unsettling, yet strangely clarifying. Think of the unlived life like unpaid emotional debt. Ignore it long enough, and interest accumulates. You might feel it as regret, restlessness, or a sense that time is speeding up. Midlife crises, sudden burnout, or abrupt life changes often aren't breakdowns, they're collections. The unconscious always collects. But here's the twist. It doesn't collect to punish, it collects to rebalance. Awareness is the only currency that reduces the debt. The moment you start living even a small part of what you denied, pressure begins to ease. Let's make this concrete. Ask yourself one simple but uncomfortable question. If nothing changed for the next 10 years, what would I regret not having lived? Don't overthink it. Write the first honest answers. Then choose one small action that honors that truth. If it's creativity, schedule 2 hours a week to write, paint, or build, no audience required. If it's connection, initiate one honest conversation you've been avoiding. If it's meaning, read something that stretches you, like Man's Search for Meaning or The Alchemist, and reflect, not just consume. Small acts of alignment carry disproportionate power. The tragedy isn't that people fail, it's that they never fully show up to their own lives. The unlived life asks for presence, not perfection. Integration doesn't require abandoning responsibilities, it requires honesty within them. When you begin to live in alignment, even imperfectly, fate responds differently. Resistance softens, decisions simplify, energy returns. Destiny no longer needs to push you through discomfort because you're moving willingly. And here's the quiet truth few people tell you. The unlived life doesn't vanish once you acknowledge it. It transforms into direction. What once felt like pressure becomes purpose. What once felt like fate becomes choice. But this only happens when consciousness meets courage. As you sense this shift, something opens naturally. The understanding that everything you've explored so far has been preparing you for this exact moment of decision. Now the question isn't whether this applies to you. The real question is what you're going to do with what you now see. You've seen how the unconscious shapes fate, how repetition carries meaning, how pain contains intelligence, and how awareness quietly rewrites destiny. But insight alone changes nothing if it stays abstract. The unlived life doesn't ask for grand gestures. It asks for participation. One honest decision, one boundary respected, one truth acted on instead of postponed. That's how integration begins. Not all at once, but deliberately. So pause for a moment and ask yourself, what pattern do I keep living that I now recognize? What part of me have I been avoiding that clearly wants expression? If I acted with just 5% more consciousness this week, what would I do differently, starting today? This is where fate either tightens again or loosens. Because every time you choose awareness over autopilot, you reclaim a piece of authorship over your life. You stop waiting for clarity and start creating. And that's how the unlived life transforms, from a quiet burden into a clear direction. If this resonated with you, don't let it fade into another saved video. Apply it, reflect, act. And if you want to keep exploring these ideas, deep psychology, consciousness, shadow, and inner transformation, subscribe to Mind's Silent Echo and turn on notifications. This channel exists to help you hear what your inner world has been trying to say all along.